I would like to give you a short introduction about myself. I would show you shortly a bit about the .NET roadmap. Then I come to the hot topic, what we have new in .NET 6 and what is new in .NET 10, C# 10, sorry. That's the language feature from the .NET framework. And then we have a Q&A session where I would answer the questions you had during the talk or prior to the talk in the Slido shares. Okay, then shortly about me. My name is, as I already said, it's Jan Moser. I work with .NET since version 1.0. That's like 20 years ago. So a long time already. I work at NFQ as a senior technical architect, and I'm an expert for the .NET technologies and Azure cloud services. Because I do that a very long time, and as already was said, I'm also a certified solution architect expert for Microsoft Azure and a software architecture instructor from ISAQB. I live in Vietnam now since 4.5 years. I can speak a bit Vietnamese, and I can eat most of the Vietnamese dishes. And if I do not code, I often play DJ at some bars around Saigon, Da Nang, or Hanoi, or I do train martial arts. You find here my email address in case you have questions after the talk, my LinkedIn profile. When you have some questions, just ask also after the task. Good. So we would come to the .NET roadmap. In 2019, Microsoft released the .NET Core 3.0, the .NET Core. Sorry. So in .NET in 2016, .NET Core 1.0 was released because Microsoft had a problem with their community, because they said, yeah, .NET framework is cool, but it only works on Microsoft Windows machines. We don't want that. We don't want to have Microsoft controlling everything and so on. Java is much cooler because it's open source and people can work on that, and it works on every machine. So Microsoft said, okay, let's do something similar. They made this .NET Core movement in 2016, where they basically say, we split up one part of the .NET framework, which works on everything, on Linux, on macOS, on Android, on iOS, on whatever. We cannot call that .NET, so we call it .NET Core. And let's make that open source. So the whole .NET Core in 2016 became open source. People could join and participate and work on the .NET framework. That went on from 1.0, 2.0 to 1 to 2. Then in September, you saw 3.0, then 3.1. And then Microsoft said, hey, something is wrong. People just start to use .NET Core because also with the cloud, when you have virtual machines in the cloud, the Windows ones are expensive because of licenses. The Linux ones were cheap, or still are much cheaper. So everyone works on .NET Core. So Microsoft said, okay, we maybe have to check here that we bring everything again together and make everything open source and try to make .NET just as a cross-platform appliance as Java already was since many years. So in November 2020, they brought out the .NET 5. So the core and the .NET full framework, they were again merged together. And .NET 5 was a big step because they say now everything is one framework, and we just use workloads on top of that. So that you can use it on Android, so that you can use it as .NET Core, or what the .NET Core before was. And by doing this, they also could make the code base much leaner. And by that, you also had quite a lot of performance improvements. Now, 1 year passed on, people were working on that, and now we have .NET 6, the new framework, which comes out in 1 month. It's at the .NET Conf, so it will be between the 9th and the 11th of November this year. .NET 6 will come out. It will continue to follow this approach of harmonizing all the things. They have this big project which is called MAUI, the multi-application UI framework, that you basically, that's maybe for web people and people that are used to Java, not something very special, but you basically can create one UI and then say deploy it for Android, for iOS, for Linux, for Windows, and basically the rest, how it is done and how it's presented, is done by this MAUI framework. So you write your code once and you can deploy it to everything, from browser to phone to smartwatch to smart TV to Windows PC. .NET 6 is also an LTS release that's called a long-term support release. That means all the .NET programs you write, all the things you use your framework with, have 3 years of support. That's the problem if you have a GA approach like the .NET 5 or the .NET 3.0. They are only valid until the next LTS comes out. That means if .NET 6 comes out, .NET 5 basically goes end of life. That means you get still updates, but it will phase out, and usually 1 year later or latest in 2023, when .NET 8 is supposed to come out, most probably the .NET 5 support will end. So that means basically no security updates and nothing anymore. The same you had with .NET Core 2.2. So if your company also still works on .NET 2.2, please consider to upgrade this, just for also security reasons, to at least .NET Core 3.1 or maybe later to .NET 6. So let's come to the .NET 6 new features. This is a non-complete introduction. .NET 6, as every big like major .NET release, has a plethora of new features. It has a lot of under the hood, also a lot of very special features that come out. I try to keep it here on the a bit like popular way, stuff I think I will use a lot in my code. And I also, it's not super complex that you need to be the .NET expert. It's so that everyone can here follow and have the first steps in this very cool release, which I think. First things, some things to know. .NET is to be released, as I said, on the .NET Conf between the 9th and the 11th of November 21. The actual version you find in the internet is a release candidate. It's the .NET RC2. Microsoft says the RC is feature complete, but it has still some bugs. I tried it out when I made some demo, and even in the small and easier demos, I run into some issues. I run into some non-intuitive stuff yet. So only pirates use it in production. If you do that, that's at your own risk, and good luck on that. The RC is also, I mean, that's like preview, means they are super allowed to change everything. Even breaking changes. RC, they should not break anything anymore, but just don't use it in production yet. Also, I recommend you to use a Docker container or a virtual machine to install the .NET 6 framework and also the new Visual Studio. It just makes stuff so much easier to remove, because otherwise you have to find out that he's really removed everything, and then you sometimes run into problem when the real framework comes out. I would recommend for the new .NET features to use the new Visual Studio 2022 preview edition. It's for free as long as it's preview. You can download the community, which always is free, the professional, which costs you, and the enterprise, which costs you more. So you can download that, and it's if you know Visual Studio, it's very good. I think they made a lot. It became a lot more developer friendly, especially when I typed in. They have these AI helping type stuff. You can just hit tab, so you don't type a lot of code. Honestly, it helped me a lot. I can show you, and I do some demos like what I mean. At the moment, the problem is the RC2 does not yet run on Visual Studio for Mac yet. RC1 does. RC2 came out last week, so they fucked up some stuff with the Visual Studio for Mac yet, so it does not run there yet. So if you want to test it out now, install via Parallels a Windows VM or a Docker container or anything that runs it. Just on the Mac, it does not work. In case when you do like me, use Rider from JetBrains, like the guys that make the ReSharper, they also have an IDE. They do not yet officially support the .NET release candidate. It works, but sometimes I got some cryptic error messages from my Rider. Mostly it works. So, but if you want the full smooth experience, take the Visual Studio 2020 Preview Edition. So let's come to the new features of the .NET framework. As I said, that's not a complete enumeration. This is basically just some of the key features. One of the big ones, minimal APIs. I will come to this in the next slides. The SDK workloads, they help us to reduce the size of our packages. Performance improvement, and that I think is one of the biggest things to consider because it's massively more. We have this MAUI thing, one UI to rule them all. This one UI approach for all the environments the application can run on. And last but not least, on the .NET framework, there is the support for the new standards, HTTP 3 and OpenSSL 3. These are at the moment still in review, so they are not fixed standards yet, but they are to be proposed. But the actual approved features are already supported by Microsoft in the .NET 6 framework. Okay, let's go first to the minimal APIs. Minimal APIs, like for people that have no knowledge of .NET, this is nothing cool, I think. Because especially if you come from a script language, you think, well, man, we always write stuff like this. So if you come from a language like PHP, Python, Ruby, where it's very easy to set up stuff and very straightforward, then this is nothing special for you if you come as me from the old .NET world. You have so-called MVC, the like ASP.NET MVC was a framework. Like MVC is a pattern. It's called Model View Controller, where the model provides the data, the controller invokes model and provides the model data to the view. So this is a very common approach to separate the business logic, the data logic from the presentation logic. .NET had that a long time ago. You could create something, you could create like server-side rendered websites. So basically you could write some bits of code in your website. As a server, it was rendered and sent to your machine. .NET then Core came with Core, so they made this MVC Core. The problem was because they put together the ASP.NET MVC approach for making these websites and the pure web API, like a normal API approach to make REST APIs. They have a lot of clutter you needed from this MVC framework, but they could not separate this because a lot of people were still using both. Now with .NET 6, they changed that. Like in the first picture, you can see it. Let me see here. I mean, you need a lot. You need this API controller attribute. You need to define the route under which route the API will react, and then you will have your code and send everything back. You have to see here under which keyword or a HTTP word am I around. This is an HTTP GET request, and there you can do something. So basically all this is just the overhead from the MVC framework, and it takes a lot, like it takes more CPU load, it takes more RAM, it takes longer to start up. And basically, especially if you have a scaled workload where you pay CPU load, or if you have to host several of those processes on one machine in the cloud, especially, you need a bigger machine that costs you more, etc. So Microsoft said, okay, .NET 6, we're in the future now. We separate this. We call something that is called minimal APIs. Minimal APIs are quite easy, just the same, but with all this clutter away. So what you do is we go basically from this to this one. You see the code here is still the same, but instead of putting all this overhead, we just say, okay, we define the route, we define the map get, like with the keyword, like we want a get request to this route. And then if that happens, execute that. That's it, app run and have fun. That's basically how it is. It's much leaner. It starts up much faster, and it takes much less resources. And that's like, especially if you go in a trendy architecture pattern, like for instance microservices, or you go over message-based event-driven architecture where you have a lot of consumer and producer small steps that take the messages or create messages. These APIs save a lot of your time. It saves startup time, and it also saves you the resources that you are allowed to use, because it's much easier when you can have these small startups instead of having to instantiate everything and load the whole world and the whole MVC stuff in case you don't need it. Microservices at the moment, they work only for REST. There is no GraphQL and OData out of the box. If you would need that, you would still need this old school ASP.NET Core MVC approach. This still works in .NET 6, no problem. It's just, so you could also, your old code, you can easily migrate this. This will run and compile in .NET 6, and you profit of the performance. It just takes a bit more resources than this one, and it looks much leaner in this case. Then the next one, the SDK workloads. The problem, like as Java, .NET cannot do magic. They are like Java and .NET are running on a so-called virtual machine, and .NET is called the Common Language Runtime. It's an abstraction layer that abstracts the underlying operating system, be it a phone, be it a Raspberry Pi, be it Linux, be it a Mac, be it a Windows machine, from your code part, so that it's independent. They also use these SDKs, and the problem is at the moment they had one SDK, and the problem, these apps then, when you created it, it included a lot of stuff you did maybe not need at all. If you don't need this, that means you install big apps, you have big apps, you have a lot of load up time because a lot of the libraries have to be instantiated and loaded. It's done by .NET. You don't see that, you don't have to care, but it takes your time, your CPU, your RAM. Now, .NET 6 came out, or comes out, and the Microsoft people thought about, hey, how could we make that better? What they say is now we have a basic SDK. These are the common functions everyone they think should need. But now if you want to add a special workload to it, this is especially useful if you go into this MAUI, this UI stuff, because at the moment before that, you had to load the whole, like if you do Xamarin, it loads a lot of functions, not only for one platform. It has a lot of overhead. And with now these things here, you can basically create these workload SDKs so that you say, okay, my application is built for target iOS, target Android, target WebAssembly. Like WebAssembly is something like a little virtual machine in your browser so that you can use C# code, or you could even use C++ code in your browser. This is nothing new. Microsoft brought that out several years ago under the type of Blazor, so that you can write an application fully in C#, and it compiles and it creates you a browser runnable assembly. So basically you can write C# code as if you're backend, but it basically is run in a browser application, like a single page application. So this is something done by Microsoft, or like in this WebAssembly project. So, but this also that's one of the problems they had. Their Blazor applications, they become huge. They are 5 to 10 times bigger than a React.js or an Angular application. It is completely unusable. No one uses it. Too big, too slow. They don't want that. And now what they had is they stripped that off, and these SDK workloads, you can say my application targets A, B, or C, and then you can build it for each like target audience or target system, and then it only adds to this basic SDK functions, the functions needed for the application environment, let's say an Android, iOS, etc. As you can see here, you have it here, especially for Android. You have for iOS, you can say it's a macOS application, a tvOS application, or this WebAssembly thing. So it depends on how you want to do it, and then the SDK becomes smaller or bigger. That helps you in two things. It helps you especially when you don't want to create a big app. It keeps your app small, and that's also fast, and the performance can get better.
So we have one question from
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So you can see the task box that he has the question about, is there any advantage of minimal API of .NET 6 when compare it to Node.js or Python for the same purpose?
That depends on what you define as an advantage. .NET is a compiled language. The Node.js and the Python is not. So the thing is, no, if you, let's say, if you know what you do in Node.js, basically write it in Node.js, because you will be it will be the same. But if you know what you do in Python, do it in Python. The minimal API here is just making .NET more in a style of Python and Node.js APIs, so that it is leaner, and you can start and write your APIs faster, and do not have to rely on this old school MVC stuff, which you in a normal API scenario you do not need. So like, because with Python you can, with the Flask server, it's super easy to set up an API, or with Node.js as well. So no, there is not really an advantage. The advantage comes in the next slide. It's a compiled language. So basically, I mean, I can pre-compile it. I know on what platform I run. And by this, maybe, depending on how you write your code, I've seen people who are very good in Node.js and Python. They can write really performant code on that. But on average, if you a bit know what you do, the compiled language here just gives you some features. It's compiled and does a bit faster on average case. And the second thing is, as it is compiled, you find out if you have a mistake, most probably during build time and not on runtime. I mean, on runtime, if something you find out on runtime, that means your system crashed already or has an exception or anything. If I find it out in build time, I still can correct it before running. Does that answer the questions?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Let me go back to. Good. Okay, now the thing that I also told is the performance improvement. .NET saw a lot of under the hood tweaks and performance improvements. Especially when it comes to numeric types. I saw these benchmarks you see here in the link. These you can check yourself, these benchmarks. If they use big integer, they could basically reduce the time to process these integer and big integer types by 85 to 90%. So your application is double as fast in this special case, just saying. What I checked and what I read and what I asked also the Microsoft guys, they say in average, depending on what you do, from a .NET Core 3X project to a .NET 6, if you compile it new and if you don't change the code, you can just mostly reuse everything you have and just compile to .NET 6. You should gain between 10 and 50% performance improvement. And I saw in the Slidos that's one of the things. Why should we move from .NET 5 or .NET 3, .NET Core to .NET 6? This is one of the reasons, or one of the best reasons, I would say, because they really improve performance. I have quite some colleagues in other companies and other projects. They already had showcase projects for customers, and they said they migrated their code bases from 3.2 .NET Core 3.2 to .NET 6, and that was like really seeable. Like you could see the change even in the UI. The APIs were much faster, and when we measured it, it was like up to 30 to 40%. So really have a look at that. If you use .NET 5, it's a bit less because they already improved a lot of things. So I say in my experience, and also Microsoft told me that, calculate between 5 and 25% performance boost. It can also be more. I mean, they do not change everything. They have specific points, so that a bit depends on what your code uses and how your code is built. But in average, that's what you can get out. Then the next one, the .NET MAUI, that would have been a very, very cool feature. That's the multi-platform app UI. As I said, it's this one UI framework to rule them all. So you build your UI once and say, okay, now distribute to Windows, OS X, Linux, tvOS, iOS, whatever. The .NET framework then creates and adapts the UI that it will work on your Android or your iOS phone, that it will work on OS X and Windows. So basically you write your code bases, including the UI, only once, and then basically just compile it for different sources and everything should work. The problem is they had quite some issues with this. It works on some platforms very well. On some platforms, it's very, very gruesome and you would not like to use it at the moment. So they had to decide that they cannot make the deadline. We all know these situations, I think. And then it will be postponed. They say they're not sure. Maybe Q1, maybe Q2 2022, like next year. It's a pity, would be a cool thing, but at the moment, unfortunately not. And for the last in the .NET 6 thing, new features is the HTTP v3 and the OpenSSL v3 support. The HTTP standard 3 and the OpenSSL 3 standard, they are basically at the moment in review. They are not yet fixed. They are not yet confirmed, but there are some of the features are already basically fixed. I mean, everyone agrees that this is how it should be done and that they use it. And .NET 6 already does support those HTTP standards and the OpenSSL 3 standard for the TLS communication. The HTTP 3 is just basically better, especially if you go into TLS, the old one. In 2, they create one tunnel, and then basically if one package blocks the line, everything is blocked. We all know that from big ships in the Suez Canal with this evergreen. They basically block everything. No packages can go through. The same here, and HTTP 3 here offers a bit better performance, as it does treats these tunnels separately and then sends these packages. That helps you if your SPA uses micro front ends, like you have a lot of small widgets which do their own calls. That helps much easier on those and can improve performance a bit. I honestly never run into that problem for now, but I read that this just can help and that there is also a good solution, especially if you have the something like Facebook, where you have tons of little widgets that gets the data from different services and then build it in the end together on one UI, or Amazon or so, and there HTTP3 can help you to unblock your data if one of these data packages gets stuck. As I said, the RFCs for HTTP v3 and OpenSSL, they're both still in review, so stuff can change here. But basically, they are abstracted by the library. So what you do is like just to add HTTP3 or add TLS3 support, and that's it. So for you, that's very abstract, and it's also rather low level, but just it gives you a free, let's say, gives you free performance boost. So this was the part about the .NET 6. Now we come to the C#, 10 things. I also here picked a variety of 6 things out. There are lots of more tasks and lots of more things they tweaked, and they are new, but some of them are very abstract. You need to be very deep, like generic math, or so you need a basic understanding, or async builder help. You need to know about .NET quite well for this. So I skipped it for this task, but even also, as we saw, the audience is mostly people with a good, like or an average or not so much advanced knowledge. So basically we keep it here in a level that we all can follow. I would talk to you the global using statements in the C#. I would show you something about the priority queue. Enumeration chunks, I think these two I really like. Then there are some syntax changes. If you're new to .NET, they may be not that new to you. If you come from .NET 5 or older versions, I will shortly show you in a demo what they can do. There is a SOCKS proxy now for secure sockets. I also elaborated shortly on this. And last, as quite a lot of people use Entity Framework as an ORM mapper, which makes sense when it comes to .NET. So they have some updates, especially for the SQL server. And I will go briefly about the, let's say, the most popular updates in my opinion. Global using statements, that's maybe not so special if you're new to .NET. The thing is, before that, if you do .NET projects since .NET, I think even 1.0, you have this using. If you come from a Python world, it's the import statements, or .NET Java, it's import, and then you basically put these packages you're depending on. The thing is that on every file or every class you use that, you have to import the same packages over and over again. Let's say there are system namespace like system or system.txt or system collections. Like if you want to use collection type, or system.txt if you want to use with enhanced string stuff, that gets very cumbersome, because in every class using system.txt, and if you have a bit of strict code formatter, they always will complain, oh sir, please organize your usings in an alphabetical order. And every time, like there are tools to help you there, but basically you get a lot of warnings. You have to refactor this every time, and it's really just annoying. So what did they do? They have these global imports, so global usings. So what you can do is basically in your solution, either use one file. I would recommend use it at once, make a global using file or so, or you can also use it in any file of your project, and you just put the global in front of the using, and then basically all the projects, all the classes in your project can use those. So here, as you see, with this global using system or global using system collection generic, that means all the classes in my project can immediately use this system or system collection generic package without having to explicitly put it in all and all and all again. So it makes your code leaner. In the end, the compiler did strip this away anyway when the IL, or the intermediate language, the compiled code looked like it does now with this global usings, but it's a cool feature. So you can tidy up your code. You say, okay, this using is a global one, so I put it in one file, and then you just have to have it there, and then you don't have to care about your other file methods anymore. The next one is a priority queue. That's a cool feature. I had usually to make something like this myself. Now they imported it. So, I mean, a queue, I think most of you are familiar with queue collections, like a stack or a queue. With the stack, you have the LIFO or the FIFO, like the last in, first out, or the first in, first out. A stack or a queue basically are simple collections. I just can add items to this stack or this queue, and then say deck queue, give me the next thing based on your type. So last in, first out means if you say DQ, you get the one that you last put in, first in, first out. If you DQ the item, it gives you the one you put first in. Very easy. In this priority queue, you can add a priority field and then say add, and then say give me the next one. The next one will be the one with the highest priority. So I will show you in the demo, you see how you can define this priority. The easy case is you use a numeric type, an integer or anything, and then the one with the lowest number will be used. And you can also define your own keywords. I will show you this shortly. Here. You can see my Visual Studio, is that correct?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. So in the very easiest thing, you have here the simple demo. As I saw, we have a priority queue. We say this priority queue is of type string. So the items we want to see or to get out are of type string, and the priority, the priority attribute is an integer. So we put some things in, say I, B, C, D, and give them different priorities. So 0, 60, 2, and 1. And if we then basically run this one, let me do that shortly. Okay, I share you my screen. This one as well. So you should now see my output. And that you can see the 0, 1, 2, 60. It gives you in the priority reason with the first item being the one with the lowest priority. So it's like nothing really cool. But now what we have is okay. Let's make it like this. Let's say this is an event system. Basically, people can register for an event, or you can or someone does register them. So you have a lot of people, and some of them people have a normal status, some of them are VIP. So I would like that say, okay, give me out first all the VIP, because the VIP people I want to have on the top of the list. So what I do is basically I created here a comparer. I say this is a string of string. And but I want to use a special comparer. So I use this, I made a class for this. There is an interface for iComparer of type T, of string in this case. I say my thing is VIP. So if they are VIP, that makes them VIP. So I check, is the left side or the right side VIP? If both are VIP or none, I return 0. That means do whatever you like. If the left is VIP, I return -1. That means take the left side. If the right side is VIP, I return 1. That means 1 is the higher one. And if I then use this one for here, so we can run that again. And I can share you my screen again. Here, share. So as you see now, you get all the VIPs first, because this is a case insensitive compare. It does not care if I use VIP, or any combination of this. So here we get all the VIPs at once. I think this is a quite cool thing, as basically you can just register. You don't care about their priority. You don't have to reorder the queue and the stack and use a complex like sorted lists or anything. You just basically put it in and then say, okay, compare me by this and give me out this people with this status here first. And this gives you quite a lot of flexibility if you also work with bigger data things. Okay. Then here. The next one. You see my presentation again.
Yes, we do.
Okay. The next one is EnumerationChunks. That's a cool thing. What you can do is, like, basically you have enumerations. They can be as big as they want, and basically you can slide them into separate chunks. You can say, take, like, I have an enumeration, 100 items, slice them into chunks of 10, and with every 10 do something. This is very cool for parallel tasks, or if you have slice big enumeration. Let's say you have an enumeration with 1 million records and you want to process 100 records in parallel. So this is very cool. So you basically can just go in there and say, okay, take this package of 10, parallel 4. So basically it releases your task. You can work on. So you can as parallel as much as your CPU allows. And that can provide and boost your performance by factors, I say, between 10 and 100. Also here, I just show you the demo. Like, it's a demo, it's a big thing. So what you do basically here, if you can see on the screen, we create an enumerable with the range from 1 to 100, which basically just means create me a list with 100 entries from 1 to 100, and then say chunk size is 10. And what you then do is you say list.chunk, and then what it does, it generates you 10 times a chunk of 10 from 1 to 10, 11 to 20, and so on and so on. And here you could use a parallel for each, and then you could do stuff in parallel. And what it does basically, it runs this and goes on, and then you can do everything in parallel, and that performance boosts your applications by a huge number. I mean, a parallel for each, if you do that properly, or a parallel for also, they are very, very performance boosting. But now with this, you can chunk it a lot. You could do that before with a lot of code. You have to skip and take and have to take record on your own. But with this one, it's very easy. It's basically one line of code. You say, hey, chunk me this in sizes. Also, if you get a stream from something, basically, and you say, okay, I don't want to, I get something streams in. I don't want to have these features, or I don't want to run the code all the time. So I wait until I have 10, and then basically I start and work with this. This is a very, very useful feature with these chunkings.
Oh, hi, John.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you come back to the demo? So I just have the question about we can use a parallel on the. That just mean I think that we can move the parallel to the over the forest. That mean we can use to chunk for each the parallel, because that mean if you can use the forest and inside in the parallel, I think I don't see what is we can to improve performance. Because when we move that parallel to the over forest, I think that we can get the chunk for which chunk size with the 10, and how about this?
That to use the full, you mean the full on the full list, huh?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Because that's mean I already to get this problem is the net score of 5. Next slide, that means we can get the problem with the dialog when we have the same multi-thread to access to the enumerable. Yeah.
That's the cool. Well, I mean, if you, it depends on what you do in the for each. If you use a constant or a pure function which does not modify the data, it creates. Let's say you would sum up. I mean, what you can do is like you could. A thing is, if you would sum up these 1 to 10, 11 to 20, you create these sum up packages, and in the end would calculate this. That would what it would help. I think the example here, I tried to keep it very easy. The thing is here, if you can create some, let's say you have here a list of 10 or whatever, and then do something with this package, and then maybe save this together. That's what it is. The chunk is correct. If you just would here the console them out, that does not give you any performance index. But let's say in every chunk you would build the sum, and in the end you would sum everything together or so. That's where it would help you here.
Yeah,
that's correct. As you said, for this example, you're fully correct. The parallel for each here would give you the same result as when you do it here, or even be a bit faster because it does not have this chunk.
That's right. That's something because when we use a parallel, it requires more the RAM, right? Just
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot for this input.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So the next one would be just, there are some syntax extensions. There are lots of smaller syntax elements. I show you some of them. First of all, the date, like at the moment you have a bit of problem because there is one date for date time. It's called date time, and it always gives you a date and a time. And if you only want the date or the time, they have now two data types called date only and time only, and basically they do what you say. I mean, they give you out one date and give you just the time. So basically, if you say, I don't care about the time, I just hotel booking, for instance, I come on Sunday, I go on Monday. So basically, I don't care about the time for now. Or if you do an hour booking system or anything, and I say I only care about the time, then you would use these time only, which only basically takes a time input and creates a time object. This is it's not a big change. It just helps you if you want that if you use these things. The constant string interpolation, I will show you. This is something cool, like in .NET. Since quite some version, you can use a $sign, and then you can use curly brackets to include other objects in a string. Constants are always a problem in .NET because until .NET 6, that was not allowed to use that notation because they say, oh no, this is not one string, so it's bad. I don't want that. With the constant string interpolation, you can do that, though it's quite limited. You can only use constant strings in other constant strings. For the property pattern, that's just neat. If you use property patterns, I show you this example. It's something from .NET 8 and .NET 9. You can use now a dot. It makes the code much easier to read. And also the assign and declare a variable in one line. This is, for me, I'm not sure if I would recommend it to use to people because I think it makes the code much harder to read, but it is something I can show you here. We go shortly to this demo. Maybe here we start with as you see, is the global use things I used with these string interpolation. You have hello and world, and now with the new .NET, you can make it like this. You can say this is $, this is hello.world, and because these are constant and this is constant, it works. If one of these is not constant, you get a compile error. That's basically it. Then the date time I show you as well. Like you have a date time that gives you a date and a time. You have date only, time only. And here it just gives you the date of today, and this gives you the actual time instead of the whole date time, which you got for now. here for the default, if you see, oh no, the first or default which you have here, that's a cool thing with the new one that I can say. Before that, in .NET 5 or so, if you make first or default with this link queue, you say, give me an argument, and then you get back always, if it's not found, the default value of the value type from this. So in this case, the default value of an int is 0, so you would get back a 0. Or let's say if you have an object, and then you get back a null. That's a small extension that the or default methods you got here can now have a default value which you give back. So in this case, I give back -1 instead of 0, and can better distinguish. This makes in this case less sense if you would here, for instance, say, check if I have an object, or if I don't find it, give back a default object. For instance, if you don't like this null handling, that would make sense for here in these use cases. But this is the easiest case. I also chose that, so it's easy for people to follow. Instead of here getting that, if you can still omit it, it's completely correct. It just returns you not as a 0. If in this case you get a -1 if the object is not found, and you have this -1 thing. The assign demo, as I showed you here, is basically this is the old school way here as we used it. So you can either say, okay, we make int. You can say int x, int y equals point, and then you can assign this. What you can do now here is this new style. You can mix those assignments and the declaration, and this would give you a 10-0 thing. Honestly, I recommend you be very careful when you do that. You easily overread those, that this is a 0. So, oh yes, especially if you would hear something like this, it's super easy to overread that this one is not this one, and then you say, okay, this is 0 and this is 10. So I would rather I may be old school, but I say rather stick with something like here, because you see basically what you assign. It takes a bit more writing, but I would heavily introduce you to do it like this. It looks nice, it looks clean, and a lot of C++ people, they can write one program in one line of code. That's fully fine. I'm too stupid for this, and I'm very sorry about this. So I prefer to have my code like written out a bit more, so I still can. Let's say I never have to do that, but in case, if you're a bit drunk or whatever, have to read and to fix code like this, basically this makes it much easier to read, and you make much less, or if you're tired, you make much less mistakes in this case as in this. Then we have the min max by, what they have, like it's called min by and max by. Also not a big thing. If you have those lists of person, you can say before, that's old school, you can make max and then say, give me the maximum, the person with the maximum of age. And if you do this in the old way, before .NET 6, you get back a number, you get 30, because you said, give me back the age, the maximum age of this collection. So basically it gets back 30. And now what you can do is max by. You say, give me back the person object with the maximum age. In this case, it's Jane Smith, and here it's an integer, so you can do nothing, as you see, it's basically, and here I get back the object, so I can here have the name, I have age, because this is a class. I get here back a class of type person, and here I get back an integer, as I said. So basically you say, give me the max by the property of this, but return me the whole object. And the last and a bit more complex one, here is these property, these old school like property thing. I'm not, if you're using .NET 8 or C# 8 or .NET 5, you have these extended property patterns which you can use, and that was like you have here a segment. The segment has 2 points, and a point has a value x and a value y. So in the old school, you have to say, okay, if the point start and its property y is 0, or the end point, like the point of the end, and its property y is 0, then what you now can do is like you can use this point notation. It's also another big thing, but this, in my opinion, is much more readable than this. Also, I mean, you oversee very easily these brackets when you do code reviews or so, and or you run into problems. And here it's quite easy to like the notation is just a bit leaner. Function-wise, both of it works still in .NET 6. I just say this one is, in my opinion, much leaner because it says, okay, it is like I, as an object-oriented guy, comes to this one. And then we come to the last slides of the last ones here. The SOCKS proxy. If you're not familiar with Socket Secure Protocol, this is a protocol standard which is it is designed for secure communication between a client and server with a non-transparent firewall in between. It uses some kind of proxy. It makes it much harder to hack. If you are in a security related field, have a look at it. With the new .NET 6 thing, you don't have to change code a lot. It's more infrastructure that you have to put up the SOCKS infrastructure. But for you as the code, you basically just create the same as you did this URI, and you just use this SOCKS 5 or SOCKS 4 or whatever protocol type, and then you can use an HTTP client handler attached to its proxy, and it can do it out of the box, and then you can use your HTTP client as before. SOCKS can use, as it is lower level, it's level 5 of the OSI, layer 5 of the OSI model. So basically it supports most of the transport protocols, HTTP, FTP, I think gRPC also works with it. Like all these protocols work, and it just enhances your security out of the box. It's a bit specific, it's cool, it really is quite secure. You need a lot more effort to hack it. But that's up to you. If you want to use it, have a look at it, or also have a look about the SOCKS. And the last but not least, the Entity Framework 6 updates. It releases also a new Entity Framework version with .NET 6. First, the biggest one is in the SQL Server. We have temporal tables. These are tables that log automatically every change. So if you add a record, if you delete it, it creates like a copy of everything. And the cool thing is you can say, give me the table, select star from this table at date yesterday. And basically it will give you the state of the point in time. Or you can say, give me all the changes between yesterday and today. And basically it will list you like an audit record, all the changes that were done. Also, a new thing, which is, I think, the best for me, is like the migration bundles. If you use code first, you create first your code classes, and they create like an SQL script to create the database. You can make now your own executable out there. Say, okay, make me an exe file or make me a script file for Linux, and then basically you can implement this in your DevOps pipeline, or if your deployment pipeline. So you run first the migration standalone from your code. That means in case something fails, you already find that out, and it's not a cryptic error message in your code when you start it up the first time. So this is a cool thing, I think, these migration bundles. And the last thing, if you use with a lot of models, I saw big insurance companies, they use models with hundreds, 1,000 entities or so. They compile models, they help boosting the performance. What they do is basically they take the model, they compile everything, and then your startup time and your performance is much better. Especially the startup time, if you have to load and instantiate everything, that can boost you up to 5 to 10 times faster in this part of the application. So if you have a big, it makes no sense if you have like 5 or 10 entities with like 10, 15 properties. I think it will help a bit, but not really a lot. But if you come and your data model has 100 tables, 200 or more tables, and a lot of relations, a lot of properties, the compiled model here can give you a new boost in performance and startup, especially because it takes quite a long time to load that stuff. Okay, that's all I have. Are there questions or like?
Yeah, sure. I think that let's go with the question that in related to our topic first, and then we come to the Slido. And I saw two questions over here from Tin and Chang. So for Tin, he has a question about can we put attribute to on minimal? It's related to .NET 6. Yeah.
Yes, like it depends what attribute. Yeah, I mean, in the end, you can make a delegate to a function, and on that function you can put any attributes you like. Like let's say it's obsolete, deprecated. The old school attributes, like you have route, etc. You don't use. What you could do is you can use your authorized attribute as you used it before on your function, and then just create a delegate to this function, and that works. For instance, all that would work. Also, the latest RC2 has now support for Swagger and the Open API. So, but all these attributes, which you basically know, like authorize, or if you use the function attributes or self-made attributes, some people do that, or you have like code-related attributes. Yes, I never tried it out. What happens if you would overwrite the route attribute with the route on top? As I understand the chain of command, it calls first the map get, and this would also result in a call of the delegated method, which would, before it executes, first execute the attribute. So I think you could do some dirty stuff there. What happens when you would create a clashing route at the moment, I don't know. But that would be maybe something to try out. That is like is a good thing. But the code attribute authorizer, all that stuff that you already use, you can reuse this because it's normal in the function, these function attributes which you have. Just everything really related to the MVC framework, very special in this case, not. In .NET 3.1, we have memory issues. Honestly, I would say this could be a code problem. I mean, if the memory usage grows indefinitely, that's like something takes away your memory. So what I say there is like maybe use a profiler like .NET, like these .NET Peak, or sorry, .NET memory or so, and have there a look and check. Often it's that you forgot to release something and then the garbage collector cannot collect it. And the problem is if you have a lot of like something keeps the reference on this. So if you have a lot of objects generated, also if you have a let's say a sophisticated dependency injection setup, it can happen that something does not release the classes properly, and then it piles up in memory. So no, .NET 6 does most probably not fix that problem, because I think it's a code issue. Maybe it does because you run into something, but chances are quite high that this does not solve your problem. I would say if you have that really problem, use a memory profiler and see, like from JetBrains. I'm a JetBrains fan. From ReSharper, they have also a memory profiler. There is also ANTS profiler you can use for this. I mean, you attach it to the process, and then you see they have like the easiest way. You just create baselines, and they create some hotspots for you. So the hotspots here would then be a thing to look into the code.